It's fascinating. So we're in Parshas Shelach. Parshas Shelach is all about the Meraglim. It says in Parshas Shelach, Savas b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta aleihem. Actually, I don't think this is in Parshas Shelach. It's Karbani Lachem L'Yishirech. It's not in Parshas Shelach. No, okay, just a pasuk by the Himik Davar. Okay, let's get my bearing straight over here. What? Pinchas. Yeah, it makes more sense. V'amarta aleihem is Karbani Lachmi L'Yishirech L'Chayach Tishmu L'Akrav L'Bamayatay. So there's a fascinating Himik Davar over here who explains the word lechem. It's an incredible idea because we eat bread many times. I hope at least, I would say at least 3 times a Shabbos, but let's say at least 2 times a Shabbos, even those who are in Makbid, although the Shulchan Aruch says one should be lechatchila on Shabbos, of Adam Lava Malka, of course. For those who are Makbid in other parts of Shulchan Aruch, Pas Shachris, supposed to have bread every morning. Yeah, it is, it isn't, okay, it's a Gemara, it's not a Shulchan Aruch, okay, weiter. But I said that because you had bread this morning. I was trying to make you feel good. So, what is the word lechem? What is the word lechem? The word lechem, let's read a few words of the Ha'imik Davar. As Karbani Lachmi, Shem lechem mashmai pu'ulat hachibur. Says the Ha'imik Davar. The word lechem is the pu'ula, the action of chibur, of connecting. Behit kashrus amitz, with a strong connection. Umedubak, and stuck together. Ka'adam shuhu, and where does, everyone's wondering, the word lechem means bread. How does the word lechem mean connection? He says, Ka'adam shu melachem shnei nisarim. When you take 2 pieces of wood and you connect them, you're melachem them. Umadbikim zezeh. Pirusha, what does that mean? Diteva yodua, we all know that when you take 2 pieces of wood, you smooth them down and you press them very, very close together to the point that there's no air in between them, then what happens is it's impossible to separate them. Now, I believe, I didn't get a chance to look up the science, hopefully someone here knows. I believe this is without anything in between them. If you just take 2 perfectly straight pieces of wood and you push with lots of force between them, if all the air comes out, then they get stuck together. The wood itself, I believe, that's the Messias. I think that's what he's saying, is that even without any item actually connecting them, they themselves, from the mere force and lack of anything else, 2 very smooth things. Sometimes you'll have like 2 things and you can't get them together. You even have it with plastic cups sometimes, and just because of the air, when there's no air in between, you can't separate them. And then you'll twist it a little bit and then it comes out. Why does that happen? Because when there's no air between 2 things, what happens is they get stuck. So he's saying is, melachem means to connect with this strong connection. V'hine kara kadosh baruch hu karbanos b'chlal lachmi. Hashem says, as karbani lachmi. Why? Shu mechaber kaviyachal as a Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Because what do karbanos do for us? It connects Hashem to us. In reality, we really could stop over here because this is a fascinating idea when you think about it. That every karban that we bring to Hashem, we could utilize this in our tefillah. What does it do? It's melachem, karbani lachmi. We're pushing 2 things together. It's connecting us to Hashem. But what does it have to do with the word lechem? So over here he writes, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Gedoyla legima shemakreves. That we know that food, what does food do? Food brings people together. We know there's numerous and numerous gezeras on food. Starting with yayin, as we all know, yayin esech. Continuing to bread, which maybe not as many people know. If a guy breaks bread in his house, all the ingredients could be kosher, you're not allowed to eat that bread. But what's wrong? What's wrong? It's called pas akum. It's pas akum. We don't eat pas akum. If a guy bakes bread in a factory, then we could eat that item. That's called pas palter. There's a chumrah, not even to eat that item. But the reason is because bread brings people together. It's one of the real reasons of the Gzeros Mishum Chasanas, is that if you come and the reason why it's called breaking bread, right? All the times you sat together, you had bread together, it shows a form of kirva. So that's really what we're seeing over here is karbani lachmi. What does this have to do with Parshas Shelach? It's always the $1 million question. So we have a beautiful shot over here. Moshe Rabbeinu sends the Meraglim. How many Meraglim does Moshe Rabbeinu send? 12. Where else are Meraglim sent in Tanakh?
Yeshua.
Oh, very good. By Yeshua. Very good. It's this week's Haftarah, it happens to be. Yeshua sends 2 Meraglim. Yeshua's 2 Meraglim are successful. Moshe Rabbeinu's 12 Meraglim are an epic failure. What was the difference between Yeshua and Moshe Rabbeinu's Meraglim? So over here he quotes from a Yid, a Rav Chagai Valusky. Apparently he's the assistant. Oh, you know him, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was wondering, like, this guy's the assistant chief rabbi of the IDF, and you're like, oh yeah, Rav Chagai. The assistant chief rabbi of the IDF, who explains two differences between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yeshua's Meraglim. So the first difference, I think we all understood, is 12 verses 2. But what does that mean? Second difference, if you look at the Psukim, Moshe Rabbeinu sent Roshei B'nai Yisrael. He sent the heads of the tribes. Who did Yeshua send? Says the pasuk, Anoshim min Hashitim. Simple men, min Hashitim, simple men from the valleys. So the question is, what was going on over here? So he explains, which is an obvious point, and truly it reminds us of something that we said last week. If you remember, we spoke last week about the Chatzaitzers. We said over a fascinating idea from Twersky on Parsha, from Harav Twersky, that why did they blow the Chatzaitzers to gather together in the Nesiim? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu just go and call them? And we said a beautiful idea, because then one Nasi would feel slighted. He called me first, he called me second. So we had to gather them all together. In a similar vein, why did Moshe Rabbeinu send 12 Nesiim from the Rosh, from the heads? Because that's where Klal Yisrael was holding. Klal Yisrael was holding in a place that if he didn't send one from each Shevet, hey, why don't you send someone from me? And if he didn't send the Rosh, he sent a regular person, again Klal Yisrael would have been like, what's going on? Why did you send him? You sent a regular guy? Why didn't you send the Nasi? By Yeshua, what was happening? Klal Yisrael's finally entering into Eretz Yisrael. Klal Yisrael's in a beautiful place. Now, who does Yeshua send? He doesn't need to send one from every Shevet, because Klal Yisrael's in unison. When you're in unison, it doesn't really make a difference who it is. He sends just two. And what people does he send? He sends a simple what? He sends simple anoshim min hashitim. Simple men, because no one made a difference. A beautiful, absolutely beautiful pshat. But we're still all wondering, what does this have to do with bread? What does that have to do with bread? So the message is obvious. Is what creates the greatest unity? A good party. What's the greatest kirva? Lechem, bread. So when you have lechem around the table and you're all eating together, we have a choice. We can utilize our seudais, we can utilize our lechem as a form of melachem to connect ourselves with each other, as a form of kirva, as a form of achdus. Or we can utilize our lechem as a place of gossip, as a place of all other unfortunate things that happened at meals. And therefore, that's what we see from the power of bread. Beautiful. Now, what's the story? There's always three parts. Everyone knows. What's the story? So the story, I believe, is a famous one. It just happened. I believe this is famous. This is true. We even have the YouTube link if you want to watch it. Shows that obviously it's true. And it was reported by Arutz Sheva. So it's certainly true. But this one, I think this one, as they say, went viral. And there was no community notes correcting it, for those who know. So says the story as follows. In Eretz Yisrael, over the past little bit, there was a debate. This is always a debate in Eretz Yisrael. You just have to hang out in the right places. And the country is being torn in half. Okay, the country is always being torn in half. Nothing here is a chiddush. But the chiddush is what happened, is that there was a protest staged in Bnei Brak. And this protest was, of course, as every protest is, from the Haredi, from the right wing versus the left wing, pro-reform, not pro-reform, what's going on in the government. I'll be very honest, I actually don't know. It says over here, proposed judicial reform. That's as much as I know. Okay, it's not so important. And they were assuming that what's going to happen, and sometimes this does happen, unfortunately, is that the protest is not going to be such a nice event. Not going to be such a nice event. And of course, all the news stations are set up, and they're already egging them on before they come. Obviously not on camera. And they, what's going to happen over here? What's going to happen over here? And then something incredible happened. I see from everyone's faces, a few people here saw this in the news, and many did not. What happened is the pro-right, the religious in Bnei Brak, what do? They set up stands with food and cholent and kugel. I think it was Erev Shah, Thursday something. Food, Avada. It was a fleshig or par of cholent. That's a very good shayla. They said, obviously it was fleshigs, come on. What's the difference? So, and what happened they warmly welcomed the protesters in. They welcomed them in, come, eat, and drink. And apparently at a certain point they started playing Shabbos songs. Beautiful. Mayerdik. And there's a story the clip that went around, that apparently they started playing Shalom Aleichem, And one of the protesters, who's supposed to be yelling and screaming, starts hearing Shalom Aleichem. And he's so moved that these from Yidden are serving him cholent, and obviously it was good. And there's Shalom Aleichem playing. He takes off his helmet and he starts tearing up. He starts tearing up, and this is an image that went around, that as much as we're fighting, as much as this, Lamaisa, Kulam, we're all in this together, we're all Yidden. What wonderful achdus. It's interesting, in the Hebrew over here, you have to, anyone who has the paper, make sure you read the Hebrew notes in the bottom. In the Hebrew, they write the Arutz Sheva report. So it's in Hebrew, it's not so simple to read. But at the end it says, Siper, Shashir, that the man that started tearing up when he heard the song apparently explained, and this is Mamish the punchline, his kirloy is Abba Shaloi. He remembered his father's Zatzal, Shetamid Diber ala Havas Chinam. He always spoke about loving each other, and he wanted everyone to be ba'achtos, etc. So what do we see? We see some incredible ideas, whether they're connected or not, doesn't really make a difference. It's a beautiful ideas. We have a fascinating story. We have an incredible vart in the Meraglim, and we have something absolutely beautiful about bread. But the Iker Nikuda is that we just always have to remember, and of course we could reference the Mishnah and Avos to conclude that what happens when two people sit together and they share Divrei Torah, it's kilu, you're eating from the Shulchan Gavaya, you're eating from a Kadosh Baruch Hu's table. And what happens if you don't share Divrei Torah? What is it? Kilu Achlu is Zivchei Mesim. And Rashi says Avodah Zara, which is quite a contrast. But we see is that food has this power, Lechem has this power, and Amir Hashem, we should be like the Yeshua spice, that even a simple person can represent all of Klal Yisrael, and make sure that our food opportunities create a kirva. That's why we made you try the cholent. We wanted to make sure that the food is creating a kirva and not the opposite.